Heyo everyone, let's get bricky. Heyo everyone, I'm MacGyver, and welcome back to another really fun, awesome Lego build that I have for you guys today. The reason why I am sitting awkwardly like this is because I currently have to hold it with one hand because of how big and sort of fragile it is. For those of you who may have seen, I was actually in an article in the local newspaper a couple months back. Would have seen this. I may have also teased it on Instagram once or twice, and it's definitely one of my biggest builds I've done, and I really like the look of it, even though it's not the most stable of builds. You'll understand why, and that is because it is my wonderful giant Lego sword. To give you an idea, I have to hold it about 4 feet back from the computer, and basically you can still see the tip when the pommel is on the floor. It's easily going on almost 30 feet here. And I'm going to be talking about this and showing you guys how to build it yourself. So, one of the first reasons why I need to hold this with one hand is because the handle doesn't do so well being attached to the hilt. It's one of my major gripes about this, but I'll sort of explain why. First, because it's in frame here, I'll talk first a bit about the blade, and to make it easier, I'm going to detach it. So, blade is actually double-sided. It is the exact same on both sides. I tried to get color even as best as I could, and it is very decently thick because it is two sides that are attached by these essentially 1x1s with the little outlet that take one off. It's essentially one of these pieces that is basically doubling up because you can put it in between certain pieces to where not only where the studs, it's hard to tell on this side. Basically you have the two studs that go into each other, but then the actual main part can sit in there as well in between the two plates. It's a method that I once saw something similar done on Pinterest, to which you use the 1x1 cheese slopes, and you can angle them in such a way into plates and then push it up into a regular brick, so you essentially have a double-sided thing. I used that for here because originally I was going to just have two sides, and I had absolutely no clue how to put them together, to where I do actually have one caveat for this whole thing, and it's because I made what many could be considered a sin in Lego, one of the major cardinal sins in building, and that is right there at the tip. Is that piece there is not actually a Lego 2x2. It is, I believe, a Megabox 2x2 because it is a double-sided 2x2 square piece. I know, you're not supposed to mix them together, but I ended up getting it because I ended up getting a Christmas gift from one of my relatives. They got it for me off of Amazon, and unfortunately she got scammed. I still got to keep the pieces. She got the money back. It was all taken care of. I did see that piece in mixed with these. It was a bunch of Lego pieces, a bunch of random Megabox pieces. There was even 2 Tycho pieces, which that is the weirdest scaled piece ever. Like, the regular plate is like double the thickness. The studs are even like smaller, and it was really weird. But that is one of the things, only because I wanted the tip to stay together a bit more, only because all of the other connector points weren't going to work quite as well. So that is the one thing there. But it's basically two sides put together. Here at basically the base of the hilt, there is this 1x5 Technic plate there, which is being held inside further, which you'd be able to tell by looking at the instructions coming up that it's basically connected by two 2x2 plates that have the Technic hole at the bottom of it, and there's basically one that points up and one that points down connected in there, so it hooks into both points to help anchor it, which is nice because for the actual handle, it's a little hard to see. There's two Technic pins inside this wheel that fit inside the 1x5 Technic pin. I really like the look of the blade. When I first started making this, I first basically just got out all of the basically angled like wing pieces that I had, laid them all out, and first basically just started with this sort of design. Originally I only planned each side to be about 2-3 plates thick, and now each side is 1, 2, at its thickest is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-ish, a little bit. It's a little hard to say because of these pieces. It buffs it up a little bit. But yeah, each side is about 4 plates thick, generally. And then basically each side has a 5th one, because it's literally 2 sides duplicated. Put them on top of each other, and one side fills in each side. That way one side wasn't more heavier than the other. But yeah, I really wanted the hilt part of it, basically before the blade begins, and is what connects the handle to the blade. I wanted the hilt part to very much have a narrowing into a wider sort of like rectangular shape. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought this looked very similar to the Optimus Prime's, or I think Mark Wahlberg's sword in the later 1 or 2 Transformers movies. I haven't seen them, so I can't attest to that. But that was my initial thought when I saw this. Also, the fact that when I got to this point, I really liked sort of the symmetry between how long this was with how long the blade was. I really liked that sort of ratio, which then sort of just becomes odd when you have the handle, which is, essentially like half of it, where this makes it seem more like a claymore, this makes it seem just more like a more of just a long, two-handed longsword. So it's a bit odd, but I love the design of it and the thickness. It's my favorite part of this. But initially, when I was building this sword, I got the idea for doing the sword because I was watching the Netflix show 7 Deadly Sins. Really good. Just finished it up, finally. I've been procrastinating that for a long time. I've just finished that, and I wanted to make a sword because I was really interested in the pommel of his sword, which is how and why I got this very... I say it's a dragon, but because it's gray, I could easily see how people could say it's a wolf. So I started off with this part, just the pommel, which is the bottom part of the handle. And I really wanted that animal look, and I really like how it turns out. It's not the most well put together thing. It's definitely pushing constraints of things a little bit, of some things aren't fully connected together, not fully snapped. Certain pieces like this backside is like barely connected to the actual piece. The sides don't necessarily fit into the inner workings of it. Most of it's held in by a Technic pin through holes. But I like how it turned out, so I started with that, then decided to go on to the handle, having tons of trouble, then moved on to the bladed hilt. And so this ended up being my final design for the hilt. It's essentially what would be much more than a two-hand. So yeah, it was very interesting to see how I wanted it, because I definitely wanted it to be, rounded. I didn't just want, a very square four-sided thing, or use a whole bunch of rounded pieces to it. I wanted to make it actually rounded. So the actual design I did, if I can take one of these off, and I have much better photos to display this than this video. But on the inside of here, you basically have a bunch of the round Technic sort of circles that has 6 Technic pin holes in it, and then the pin down the middle of it. And that is what is going on here. But in between each one, I have a 2x2 brick with the double-sided studs on each side of it. So the sides pins are being connected in between the two, basically Technic circles, and then the top of that 2x2 is what sticks out and what you connect the side to. Most of it is only connected by the first half. The rest just sort of extends until it hits the hilt connector. And this was really hard. A lot of this in here is barely connected at all. It basically held together by hopes and dreams and things just barely fitting together. I would not recommend it. I'm sure there's a much better way to do this design, but I had already gone through so many different iterations of how I wanted the hilt to connect, how long I wanted it to be, how stable. Because the biggest part was connecting it to the pommel was easy. I did not have a problem with that and wasn't going to. The biggest problem came when I was trying to connect it to either this or the actual hilt of the sword itself, and I did not think about that most of all. I should have started, regardless if I started with the pommel or not, I should have started with the hilt and how I was going to connect to here to make that super stable. Because that's the weakest part of this sword, and the one part I wish I would have had better, because then I could have designed the hilt off of it. But needless to say, I don't think it's awful. It definitely does its purpose well enough to where the entire idea of the sword was not practicality. It was definitely for the look, and I think I achieved that. The reason why I have this black stuff in here is sort of if you would have had a hilt and then like a leather sort of like cuff over it. That's sort of the idea of this black aesthetic here. Something you can easily leave off, but it was also how I was connecting the 3 long pieces that make up each side together, that I just sort of incorporated it in. So yeah, I mean, overall, I love the look of the sword when it comes together, but it's very impractical. This barely holds on to either part. Yeah, if you look at the picture of me holding it, I'm actually holding it more like this, to where I was holding like most of the hilt and then most of the handle separately, only because it's got some heft to it, and yeah, it's not super stable either. But yeah, I really enjoyed making this. I'd love to see what you guys think of it, following the instructions if you decide to do that. If you guys have done your own versions, I'd love to see those. I'm going to have the instructions for it play. Instructions are fairly simple from what I remember doing it a couple months ago in LDD. All the pieces were there. The biggest thing is connecting everything. So I'll let that play through and then sort of explain how it all comes together. Alright, so obviously when you're now putting it all together, that basically shows all the individual pieces. Alright, so first part done, that is basically the two blades that you have. So looking at that, all of the little connector pieces, those 1x2 with the two side studs, basically you put them in exactly where they line up because of LDD, the tolerances, you can't put them in yourself. Basically, put those in basically right where they're in. Those side ones will go in right at that side. And then put the two pieces together. Make sure you squish them all. It will come together fairly flush. There'll be a slight gap in between the two large pieces, but for the most part, it will be pretty flush. So go ahead, do that. You can obviously sort of tell where the hilt attachment will go. So go ahead, do that. Then move on to the next one. Now we've come to the point of the pommel and the hilt. So probably best way to do it is put all of the handle together and then worry about adding the pommel because it's super easy. So to give you an idea, I will take apart 3 other sides because it basically matches. So the idea is you will connect, you'll connect this top part to the smaller piece, and then because LED doesn't do it, each of those lines of those 2x2s and those circles, the Technic pin will be on top, and you sandwich it, the 2 circles in between the 2x2s. Basically, the blue 2x2s on those sides is what connects into the holes of the green plates. Basically, you get 6 of those, and then what you want to do is, first off, start with one side, then basically turn, 30 degrees, connect the next one, take the next one 30 degrees off of that. Fourth one, the studs should line up the same way as the first one. Second one, the fifth one will match up with the second. Sixth one will match up with the third, basically. That way you're covering, all 60, or not 60, whatever the number is in terms of degrees together. Basically put those 6 on, then go ahead, put on the sides. Doesn't really matter what order you put them in. Just make sure that you have one side completely covered and go around in a circle. Don't do opposite sides and work that way. Start with one, go clockwise, counterclockwise. Attach them that way. Then the pommel is super easy. That last circle, you'll basically just take that pin from the pommel, push it in. It'll be sort of secure, sort of not. Sort of play with it how you wish. And yeah, put all of those together, and then all you do, connect the handle to the sword, and Bob's your uncle. So I now have my hilt in a couple different pieces, so I'll just sort of hold the blade here. But yeah, that is basically the essence of what I call Galahad's sword, only because I really love the name Galahad in terms of the old, like, Camelot, Arthur, and the Round Table Knights. So that is my take on a giant, like, sort of life-size Lego sword. Definitely has some problems in the hilt handle area, but I think that's alright, because I'm glad the blade looks well, as well as the pommel, because I want the pommel to be iconic, sort of looking like Jon Snow's sword in Game of Thrones, Meliodas' in Seven Deadly Sins. I wanted a very iconic pommel, then the blade. The handle is just basically something to hold. So yeah, let me know down in the comments below how you guys like it, if you guys try building it yourself, any ideas, improvements, swords you guys have made. And yeah, I, as always, have been Lego MacGyver. To all you master builders out there, stay bricky, keep building, and I will see you all next time.